Ladies and gentlemen, we now introduce you to one of my favorite radio guests, a guy who is, I have to pull every phrase out of him because, he's just not comfortable talking. Said no one ever. But I have to tell you, there is no bigger defender of the Second Amendment here in the state of Oregon. And God bless Kevin Starrett, Oregon Firearms Federation. Kevin, welcome.
I don't know, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, I have no video on this, so sorry about the quality. If you have video, sorry about the quality. It's very last minute, and I know we don't have a lot of time. But just briefly, so I think most people know that the appeals court approved Pressure 114 in a decision that very few people can make any sense of. While we plan to appeal that, the legislature now has House Bill 3075. And what that will do is actually make this considerably worse. So the fees will go up, the waiting period will go up, completely unconstitutional legislation, and in essence will end gun sales in Oregon.
Yeah.
When it goes into effect, immediately the possession of magazines will become a crime. The implementation under the bill, I believe, is July of 2026. So briefly, here's the situation. And I've said this over and over again, and I know that Republicans in the legislature are really angry about this, but the reality is that Republicans in the Oregon legislature are eunuchs. They have absolutely no power to do anything. They can send out press releases, they can write stern letters, but they're basically being slapped around constantly. And it's actually getting embarrassing. I mean, the informational hearing that they had the other day was 100% anti-gun shills. And the Republicans were told, well, you can ask the question, but they're not going to answer. They'll send you a note with the answer. So the fact is that anything that the Democrats want to do is going to pass. The only purpose the Republicans serve at this point now is to provide a quorum so the Democrats can pass whatever they want. And all of the angry notes and press releases are ultimately meaningless. If 3075 passes, I've been told by the attorneys, I don't have an in-depth explanation of this, but according to the time, once 3075 passes, our lawsuits are moot. That everything we've done up until now will be meaningless. The appeals court will not hear it. Now, for that from two of the attorneys, I'm going to assume it's correct, which means that the only chance we have at this point is in the courts, and 3075 has to not pass. If the Republicans are on the floor when 3075 is heard, they will have passed it. It's that simple. And I wish it weren't so, but it is. And the Republicans' position, Republican leadership's position is that we should be attacking the Democrats. The Democrats are doing what they promised to do. They from the beginning, they have said, we're going to crush this state. Paul Evans said, we're going to starve out the Eastern Oregon counties. They've made no secret of their contempt for rural Oregon and anybody who doesn't believe in their agenda. So they're crushing everybody everywhere. It is now, there's one thing that Republicans can do, and that is not participate in this insanity. So it's still possible. I think it's unlikely, but it could still happen. And I'm encouraging people, there's time if you go to our website, the last alert that's posted has links for where you can post testimony, sign up for testimony, you can go and testify in person. I will tell you the deck will be stacked, there is no question. The people running the hearing will give a lot more time to the opponents of the Second Amendment than to us. But we still need to get everything on the record. And we need to make sure that the Republicans understand that we sent them there to protect our rights, not to fill their pockets, not to grift, not to be corrupt, not to make $1 million a year like one Eastern Oregon rep does, not to put money in nonprofits that pay them like one Southern Oregon Republican does. It is up to them to protect our rights. If they don't, we have seen the end of gun sales in Oregon to law-abiding people. And I know Bill has something more to say about this. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I thank you for the opportunity.
Kevin, if you need more, don't worry about it. I'm not chasing you off. I assure you.
I understand that. Unfortunately, I have to be chased off because I only really had 10 minutes. But that's essentially where we're at. And if what I've been told is accurate, that the lawsuits are a dead issue, if this passes, then that is the one hope we have. And unfortunately, from what I've been told by legislators that I respect, there's virtually no chance of a walkout. But if they hear from people, if they understand that we care more about what's good for Oregonians than we do about their political futures, then I think maybe they'll get the message. Because let's face it, you know, many of them have said that all we care about is our political future. You know, we now have House reps who are vying for Senate seats, who send out fundraising mails every day in defiance of House rules. And why they want to stay there, they serve no purpose, they accomplish nothing, they can do nothing positive except to stand in the way. And so what I'm hoping is that they get that message.
Kevin, how many House reps could remain and still keep Foreman? What does it take?
Right off the top of my head, I don't remember that number. I'm sure Representative Younger will be able to tell you that. Obviously, quite a few of them are going to have to walk off the floor. They are led by Christine Drazen, who's essentially a liberal Democrat. I think she's like the last person who will lead something like this. On the Republican side, Dan Bonham has already been told he can't run for office again because of the deal that was negotiated by Tim Pinot, where he lost his ability to run again, and they gave the Democrats everything they wanted. So he has nothing to lose, but ultimately, who has everything to lose are us, the people of Oregon. And it's, you know, it's not just the gun rights, it's everything that we see, and every liberty, every right we have in the state is being taken away by people who, as you accurately pointed out earlier, just get up every day to see how can we screw people. We still have the ability to stop this if the people we hire stand up and are more concerned about the rights of the people who hire them than they are about their offices and their parking spaces.
As far as fundraising, you still gathering it for a potential challenge?
Well, you know, we're still gathering to pay the bills we already have. You know,
yeah.
If you look at the bills that have been piling up by Tony Aiello's law firm, Tyler Smith's law firm on the appeal, whatever happens, there's still a lot of bills to be paid. And I can't say with absolute certainty what the future holds in terms of lawsuits, because the fact is that if they're correct, if our current lawsuits become moot and this bill becomes law, then the only option is another lawsuit. But of course, what they've written into the bill is that we're only allowed to sue them in their court in Marion County, where we would almost certainly lose, and then we have to go to the appeals court where we would almost certainly lose. And so this could be another couple of years and, you know, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars.
And at that point, the gun dealers are out of business and there's no supply, right?
Well, you know, I visited a gun dealer yesterday in Pendleton, and he told me that recently he's had offers for his business for several $1 million, and now he's sure he can't sell it to anybody. I've spoken to other gun dealers who've already closed up their shops or are in the process of closing up their shops because they don't really see anything positive on the horizon. And as far as I'm concerned, while, you know, as people who hear me on your radio show know, I'm not normally, you know, I'm kind of not really uplifting most of the time, but I do honestly believe that we have one last shot at this, and there's nothing, the Republicans stand to lose nothing by standing up and protecting our rights, because they've already been told that, you know, their votes are meaningless, their objections are meaningless, and they'll tell us, oh, we were in there fighting for you, but their fighting is, if they are there, they have voted for this bill.
If they are there, they have rolled over then. And the key then, you walk out, and then the bill goes away, ideally. And then, in order to come back in, the absences are excused in order to come back and do the rest of the business. Would that be fair? That's how you do it? And that's what Tim Knope did not do last time.
Right, precisely. He negotiated a deal where basically we gave up everything after we lost great legislators like Kim Thatcher and Art Robinson. And that was, you know, in my estimation, not a coincidence. Mm-hmm. But in this case,
no, I think that was not a bug, a feature of what was going on there, unfortunately. And that's kind of the corruption that we face within our own team.
Absolutely the case. And the fact is that this is not business as usual. This is not something that is going to be a minor inconvenience that we can live with. There will be no possible way to lawfully acquire a firearm in this state because the requirements of the bill and the measure cannot be complied with. And there are so many parts of it that haven't been properly defined that even if a person wanted to teach the required class, it's unlikely that they would have the qualifications to do it. And so, the court's position is that it's not an infringement on your right to make you wait months and pay huge fees and jump through hoops that aren't even available to jump through. If at any time, in any place, it's still possible for a person to acquire a firearm, then this legislation is not unconstitutional. And of course, it's absurd. And there are many cases that are winding their way through the higher courts that are just sitting there doing nothing. And so while I think in the long run, the federal courts will find in our favor, it could be years off. So for the businesses in our state, the Democrats have no problem crushing. For the people who need to protect themselves in the rural parts of the state, or certainly the urban parts of the state, this bill will end all of it. And when you consider that ballot measure 114 passed with a smaller margin than the voter fraud that the Democrats admit to, is clearly not a very popular position. As a matter of fact, I think KATU in Portland just had a poll that 75% of the people who responded said, this needs to go back to the drawing board. The only thing, it's not positive, it's not what I would have wanted to see happen. The only thing that we can take from this, if it becomes legislation rather than a ballot measure, is when the ballot measure passed, it was, quote, a vote of the people. There was nobody to hold accountable. If the legislature passes this, there'll be people to hold accountable. Everybody who voted for it and every Republican that was on the floor when it was voted on.
Kevin, we have Julie who had a question. What's that, Julie?
Kevin said to go to the website. What is the website?
Oh, Kevin said go to the website, what Julie was wondering, and that's OregonFirearms.org, right, Kevin?
That's correct, and the alerts are all posted there with the links that are embedded, without the typos that went out in the email version.
All right.
Bill, I have a question.
Yeah, sure, what's that?
If you own a 30-shot clip, what happens? Is that illegal?
Yeah, what happens for your currently owned 30-round magazines, let's say, Kevin? What goes on with this?
You're allowed to own them if you never leave the house with them. However, you can still be charged with illegal possession if you cannot prove that you purchased them prior to 2022. Now, the bill, and there's an amendment to this bill that says they won't prosecute anyone who purchased a magazine while the injunction was in place. But the problem is that part of the legislation goes into effect immediately. And it still requires that no magazines were purchased after the implementation date. And as you and I know, and as we've discussed several times, there is no way to prove when you purchased a magazine. It's impossible. So a magazine you've had for 20 or 30 years, if they choose to prosecute you for possessing it, you do not have any way of demonstrating how old it is. So it is enormously dangerous. What the police plan to do, what prosecutions they plan to implement, I can't say, but it is absurd. As you know, receipts don't matter, digital pictures don't matter, none of that matters. So for magazines you own, theoretically you can still own them, but you're still greatly at risk.
What's the penalty, by the way? Another person asked.
I believe it's, I'm not sure, it might be a misdemeanor, but I have to go back and check, because the bill is changing and being amended even as we speak. So even as of yesterday, there was new information there. The point is that it's a crime, and it's an outrage.
Tim, you had a question too for Kevin?
Yeah, what is the NRA doing to help you?
What is the NRA doing to help you, if anything?
Well, the NRA hasn't been involved in a state lawsuit at all. I mean, in a federal lawsuit, they said that they were involved through the National Shooting Sports Foundation, but I don't know. You'd have to take that up with them. I mean, my big gripe with the NRA is that while this was on the ballot, while this was being, decided by the voters by a tiny fraction, they assured me that they would be bringing resources to the fight, and they didn't. And when they didn't, they told me that, well, they had miscalculated, were sure it would fail. And when you consider the tiny margin that this thing passed on, I believe that the big players who got involved later on in the lawsuits had been involved earlier, like even National Shooting Sports promised us the moon and did nothing. And so our organization, a handful of other smaller organizations, tried to fight this thing, and had they come to the table then, I think it would have ended differently and millions of dollars would have been saved. But as far as what they're doing, you're going to have to ask them.
All right. Anything else before we cut Kevin loose? I'll take one more question. Go ahead.
What does that do to two Fed 22s?
Okay, what's that now?
The tube-fed 22s, like my 22, the tube feed?
Yeah, tube feed 22, that doesn't apply. Isn't that right, Kevin? A tube fed 22 caliber rifle, probably not.
Currently, that's correct.
Yeah, that doesn't apply to that one. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you, guys.
All right.
I appreciate it. Have a good meeting, and we'll talk to you again.
All right. Hey, thanks, Kevin. Kevin Starrett, Oregon Firearms Federation. OregonFirearms.org. Okay, go there and do what he's talking about in the alert. You'll find out that.